You even got the shirt on too. Jeez.
Oh man, I was told I had to make sure that
The branding you got told by Eric.
Yeah. No, I talked to Larry,
Yeah.
and I'll just say he was like, "You're gonna do that?" He's like, "Has he asked you to do that?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "You're gonna do it, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was just like, "You busy?" I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "Go on, do it." He's like, "It's good for us." I was like, "All right."
Yeah.
I do what Larry says for the most part.
Oh, that's good. It's obviously great to see Larry still involved so much. Like, I've known that guy forever. Like I remember him coming out when, geez, early '90s even. So yeah, as far as that stuff goes. So what's been going on with it in the off season for you? I know you're busy with PBR. I mean, actually, why don't you explain to people what PBR is first of all?
The platform for Canadians to essentially be seen by everybody, get famous
Yep.
without having to cross the border, right? I mean, they just show up and they play, and my staff shows up and covers their games. They show up at our events. They have the opportunity to make some pretty cool teams that travel to BC, that travel to California, New York, Georgia. So trying to make their lives a little bit easier when it comes to the recruiting process and colleges and just making sure that they're visible. So we do have a staff across the country. The core of our staff is in Ontario, and the majority of our business is currently in Ontario based on density, based on the fact that we've been here for a long time. So 10 years ago, Kemlo started it, and I was intern number 1 9 years ago. So it's been fun so far.
Yeah. Well, let's go back about a year and a half ago when Eric Spearin took over as a managing partner of the Hamilton Cardinals. How did you get involved as a general manager? Did he reach out to you, or did you reach out to him? Was it a mutual kind of conversation that happened, or?
Yeah, I was on my way to an event in Oshawa. I didn't even know that the job was posted. I didn't even know it was a thing.
Yep.
And I saw an email from Eric saying that, yeah, I'm the majority owner. This is what we're trying to do. I'd like to interview for the role. And I remember reading the email immediately and just knowing that I wanted it. Yep. That's the thing, right? And that's kind of been my sticking point with players, even when we sign them, is I just know what that feeling was, where the IBL to me was never really relevant, just based on all the business that I've done in high school. Yep. And I actually remember going to a Cardinals game in the summer preceding when I got the job, and I remember going to Bernie Arbor because I had nothing to do, so I went and watched the game.
Yep.
And Hamilton got thrashed. It was like raining. There was like 30 people there. I remember the barbed wire. But I do remember leaving the stadium thinking, wow, this place has a lot of potential. But that's all I left it at. And so when he emailed me, it was Saturday. I think he emailed me Friday night. I got it Saturday morning. I think I met him that night. I was in Oshawa, ran my event, came home, went to Boston Pizza, interviewed.
Nice.
Yeah, and he told me what it was all about, and I got the job by Tuesday. And so I hit the ground running immediately. I just saw it as an opportunity for me to work beyond the high school realm, which is all I've ever done in my career. And so that's kind of how it came to fruition. I just fell in love with Eric's vision, and we were close in age, and it was just an opportunity for me to be able to put myself around somebody that was much brighter than I was. Still am in a lot of cases, and so I have a lot to learn from him. So having the job and being able to do that's more than enough for me.
Oh, exactly. So then you guys, the Cardinals came on like gangbusters last year, and then we ran into injuries, ran into some other conflicts and everything else. We won't get into those because that's just behind us and everything else. Trade deadline, you guys were probably the signing deadline. I won't call it trade deadline, but it felt like, to me, working with all the stuff I do with around the IBL and everything else, it was just like, okay, George is going to keep me on my toes all night. I think I finally went to bed at 11:15. Then I got a message from Eric. Oh, by the way, George is still signs for more players. I was just like, are you kidding me? I was just like, I'm going to bed now. Like, you just seemed like you had to overhaul everything at that point.
Last year at the deadline, so it was my first deadline.
Yep.
First signing deadline, and I mean, I always told my players that I expected them all in my first year as the GM.
Yep.
If all things panned out the way that they were supposed to, and again, you can't factor in the negative variables of what could go wrong, especially when you do have a bit of a clock. And so the learning experience for me was, I felt like we needed to make a jump because we were near the top of the table for a decent part of the year, which given what we had on the roster, I was actually very impressed because we did have the core tools on the field.
Yep.
I felt like we needed a little bit of extra. And so when we added those parts at the deadline, again, if all those guys work out and it works the way it's supposed to work, like you keep Hoffman, you keep Cardinal, you keep all those guys, we actually have one of the most robust rosters going into the later half of the season, but we didn't. And that's just baseball, right? And
well, exactly. It happens.
For other players, but this year, I already know that we already have the majority of our roster set up. And so I just see that date more so as I'm looking for bullpen arms leading up until that day. I want to give an opportunity to the position players to get their reps in because I do want consistency in the roster. And so I don't regret anything we did at the deadline. Anything that we do it to try and win and try and compete. And that's the only reason we do anything. And the players know that. And so are mistakes going to happen? Sure. Do you know, I guess it just depends what your definition of a mistake is, right? It sucks that it didn't work out. Doesn't mean it's a mistake.
No, exactly.
And then there's always next year, right? And so I just learned what it was like. This year, I would like more consistency on the position player side. It's the only way that you can build a legacy is keeping guys around. And so it's up to them, right? They got to compete. It's all contingent on being good. And the less players you have on the roster that you got to think about moving, the better your roster is going to be long term. So that's our goal for this.
Exactly. So how does a guy like Takashi Iguchi wind up on your radar, and then how do you sign him? What was the sales pitch to him to come over here?
Reached out to us. His agent reached out a while ago, and we just weren't in a position to bring him over.
Yep.
And I want to say it was near the end of last season, so it wasn't really something that I dove too hard into, but I paid attention ever since then. I just stayed in contact with him.
Yep.
He was supposed to sign in another league, and I thought that was the end of it. And so when that contract fell through, his agent just reached back out. In my spare time, I just watch baseball on YouTube. I'm not a big cable guy. I just watch golf and baseball on YouTube. And so when I got this job, I found, well, if I'm just going to sit there on my couch and work, I may as well just watch like indie baseball, like indie Japanese baseball. And it is like IBL ball just in Japan, except all dirt infields, but the stadiums, the fans, the noise.
Yep.
So I, just based on that, I mean, you're always taking a risk on an import. And just because they're an import, it doesn't mean they're going to be better than everything.
No, exactly. Exactly.
But the process in getting him was fairly simple. And obviously we've got Kat as well, who's going to be able to translate for him.
Yep.
So I'm not overly concerned. But yeah, we're excited to have him. He's going to be here on the May 1st report date. He pitched in the Indie League out there. We'll see if he's got what it takes to pitch in the league.
Exactly. So you got some other guys that are coming in as well. You got Caden Cardoso and everything else, and then Eric Spearin talks about this guy a lot, and he says he's probably going to be an impact player this year. How did you get another one of these guys? He went to Antelope Valley as far as his schooling and everything else. Another BC native. So you guys are definitely working the West Coast pretty hard too.
Yeah, I'm looking for good players. I don't care where they are. We're fortunate that we have a home to put them in, and so I knew Cardoso from back in the day. It wasn't so much from Antelope Valley. I know he put up good numbers, but I've known that he's been a career hitter.
Yep.
He played for Corey Eckstein, who's now with the OBJ. He played for Eck when he was back with the Abbotsford Cardinals back in the day, and those teams were very good, right? Like they had guys like Cardoso. They had guys like Dylan Olson, who raked, and I think it was his senior year in the PBL. He left the yard so many times, and Cardoso was just always there. Cardoso was always a left-handed bat, was impact. He did have shoulder surgery, and so I'm not overly concerned about that anymore. He came out, he is rehabbing right now. We're going to put him at second base, but he's there for the bat. One thing I understand is, look, I want to put up runs. I know that runs make pitchers more confident. We have to play better defense. And so from, again, a positional standpoint, I just don't want to give other pitchers a break, right? If you have hitters that are in the lineup every day that are going to make an impact, that just forces pitchers to make quality pitches every single time, right? I want them to lay out muffins because we have 9 guys that can leave the yard in our batting order.
Oh, exactly.
And then we have other guys on the bench. And so I'm pumped about Cardoso. We'll see how it goes. Just being from BC is by chance. I just knew him. Colby brought him up. Obviously, that was the Antelope connection. So I knew he was available. But he's currently working out at UBC. we're excited to have him. He's hopefully going to bat in the middle of our order, and he's just a very bright individual. I could talk baseball with him all day, and I'm hoping that because we have a lot of juniors that are going to be floating around as well, a guy like Cardoso is going to be an awesome influence on them. So lots of moving parts with him, but overall, I couldn't be more excited to have him.
No, exactly. And just as far as I was actually going to touch on the junior program as well, just because I've seen you guys have taken over the reins of that more. You're, I don't know if you're the quasi GM for that one as well, or you're just kind of in more of an advisor role as far as that going. I saw you sign a new manager, I think yesterday or today, or actually it might have been today as far as the announcement as well, as far as the junior program goes. But yeah, it looks like you guys are doing what I would do as far as when I was the GM and everything else. You're trying to load up the junior program in your area. So you have those extra 10 spots you can call up from there. So if you got 10 guys that you're kind of on the fence about, they're still junior age, you can put them on this other program and then watch them grow and get some reps as far as as in that stadium as well.
I mean, so we're fortunate that we have a junior program. So I'm the GM of the junior team as well, and I don't know if that was a contingency coming in or something that I wanted. I just knew that I wanted it coming in because the 22U age bracket to me is super neglected across the board. Not by design. It's no one wakes up in the morning wanting it to be what it is. Everybody wants, and I sat in on the junior meeting a couple weeks back, and it's a lot of people that are trying to make sure that the junior loop is more robust, that it's better, that it's stronger, that it serves the purpose that it does. So I can't speak for what anybody else does and why they do it and what their purpose is. But with us, it was just such an obvious synergy between, like you saw when Brendan Daly got called up at the end of last year in the role that he played for us. And we didn't realize that he was of that caliber until a little bit later on. And I'm going to take ownership of that because it's my job to know if there's a junior player good enough to play on the IBL team at any given time when we need him. So I want to make sure that the junior team and those players know that they have a viable chance to be our future.
Exactly.
Right? I want to make sure that when they're leaving high school and they want to stay local, they don't feel like they're playing poor quality baseball anymore. I want to give them structure. I want to give them reps. We've got the facility. We've got the stadium. I've got the tech. We have the relationships, the connections, and buy-in from ownership. And so to create an atmosphere around the junior team that really makes them feel as though the IBL, look, our only goal is to win IBL championships, and the junior team enables us to do that, right? It's a no-brainer to me. I don't know why we neglect them. We can carry a number on our roster to expand our roster, and then come playoff time, I mean, those guys should just be
ready to go.
Ready to roll. Ready to go. And so then down the road, if you actually do picture long-term plans, well, these guys should be our future. And then the end goal is you have a bunch of local guys playing on your IBL team, winning championships, and you can use those import spots for guys that can't be replicated locally.
Somebody that's got a legitimate arm or somebody a legitimate bat that can just help your lineup and make it an immediate impact here.
Yeah, exactly. And so it just requires patience, and I try and preach that through the org, is that you can't talk big picture and not have patience. They just go hand in hand, and so it takes a long time. I don't know how long it's going to take. I've never done this before. It's my second year at the
You're flying blind like the rest of us. We're in that seat.
I love it, and I do see what the vision looks like. I know what the dub looks like. I just know that it takes time, and so I want to win at the IBL level. I want to win a LIMS at the junior level. And I want that culture of winning to finally just bleed through Hamilton the way that it should. So, you and I sat down, on a couple of nights during the season and everything else. You'd look out at the crowd and just like how it kept growing and growing as the season went on. It was just so great to see not only the product on the field, but the product off the field, like taking off as well. And people are starting to recognize that you have families coming to the games. Never been to Cardinals games in life, and all of a sudden they just keep coming back. They buy season tickets. Everything else just seemed to start rolling as far as that stuff goes. It was just a great atmosphere to be a part of. Yeah, I mean, it's a business, right? That's what everybody understands and should understand, right? Is you have a stadium, you can fill the seats, and what you need is to entertain the fans. And the number one source of entertainment is players on the field, right? And you got to win. And that's where it starts. And that was the meeting that Eric, Larry, and I had at the beginning, where it doesn't matter what you do off the field. If we're doing everything we're doing off the field with the fan engagement, with the game day staff,
Yep.
with the marketing, with the TV, and we're constantly at the bottom of the table. And now you're just embarrassing yourself,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
If you're going to do all that, you have to win, because
Yep, you do.
it's one thing to have the spotlight when you're really good. It's another thing to still have the spotlight when you were good and then you're not,
Yep.
right? And then people lose interest on a much bigger scale. And
Yep.
so the risk is always there, like anything. But again, between Eric, myself, Larry, Lennon, Piano, the rest of the staff, I do feel we've got the best in the league collectively, and we are all on the same page. And we lost a couple of pro teams in Hamilton, which sucks for Hamilton, but plays to our advantage.
Yep.
It really does. And
Exactly.
so you show up at Ticats games, they're in the city. And so our goal is we got to win. We got to stick around. You got to have staying power. And so, again, it just starts with the players, starts on the field, bleeds outwards. And I don't know how it didn't work out.
So what are you looking for right now, as under the roster's coming together pretty nicely right now? What is still, as far as what's the big irons in the fire for you right now? What's the shopping list looking between now and May 1st?
Nothing. I did it all on Boxing Day.
Nice.
We're good. Our roster's all signed up. We're pretty much done. We're just looking for, so we have moved on to the junior team where we're trying to fill that out. But from an IBL standpoint, I see it as we've got everything we need from a starting lineup standpoint. I'm very happy with it. We've got our rotation. We've got the majority of our bullpen set. So I think we've got like 2 or 3 roster spots left between now and the deadline to find arms that are going to be impact.
Yep.
So again, I'm just I don't like to rush. I like to take my time. And I mean, my mistake last year was rushing until the end. And so thank God for Larry. Dude always reminds me. And when he stops reminding me, it means that I'm doing the job well. So he hasn't reminded me about arms lately.
Yep.
But no, we don't have a shopping list. We're good. I know that quality players are going to fall into our lap at some point over the next few months. So I ain't really stressed about it. I don't worry about our ability to attract the best players around.
No, exactly. Now I think people realize now the Cardinals are for real and everything is going in the right direction there. So now you probably have more players reaching out there and say, okay, I'm not too happy here. Is there an opportunity maybe to go up the road to Hamilton or something? Whereas a couple of years ago, it'd be like nobody would even be taking those calls.
I'm going to say this. The players in the league the players are aware that everyone in the league, or the majority of the owners in the league, are trying to elevate the quality.
Yep.
The players aren't lost, right?
Nope.
And I've known a lot of those guys as they've grown up, and it's fun to watch them be part of organizations that really care about them. You got to care about the players, right?
Yep.
They're the only thing that matter in the league, and then it's the fans.
Yep.
But I think the culture of players switching around, I don't know if, look, the way that it was before I got there, I can't speak to it because I wasn't there and wasn't part of it. So I don't know why players did. One thing I do know is that players go where they want to go, and they just want to be happy.
Yep.
And as the year has gone on, I haven't been here all that long, and I can already see. You look at Welland, and they're the benchmark of what the league should have been, right? Like they win and they make money, and they get fans, and they got the best players. Like that is the pinnacle, right?
Yep.
Love them or hate them, they're the best. They're the number one, and so London's got the stadium, and they have their legacy, right? Like they've always got quality. They could win on any given year. And so when Eric came in, and that elevated Hamilton, now you got Toronto with their new ownership, right? You can just see, and now you got Chatham out there. You can just see that there is a direction that the league is going in, and the players aren't blind to that, right? And so I'm always conscious of that. Don't really care for poking bears. I don't really care for just, again, I don't want to tamper and just like bring in the players that don't want to be elsewhere. Players, again, we only have a maximum number of
roster spots, exactly.
And I'm looking forward to the day that we get to the point where we're turning away players that we never would have because we're extremely satisfied and happy with what we've got.
Yep.
And so we're closer to that than we ever have been. And so until we get there, we're always looking for good players, and it's our players' jobs to make sure that they're good, because the white collar problem is being a good player on a really good team.
Yep.
And it's very easy to be a good player on a bad team. And so as that culture kind of shifts, I ain't really stressed, and I don't think our players are either.
I don't know, just looking at the rosters around the league and everything, Welland's lost a lot of pitching staff and everything else. I really think there's not really a clear lock this year going into the season right now. Like Barry's going to be good, Kitchener's going to be solid, you guys are going to be good too, and then Welland and everything else. Toronto, I don't think there's a clear somebody's going to run away, go take the ball and run away with it this year. I think it's going to be up for grabs, really probably down to the very nitty gritty, to the end of pretty much the bitter end here. I don't think.
Is there typically going into the year an organization you think is going to run away with it?
Well, sometimes it's just a space of when the Brantford had the dynasty and everything else, and the Barrie had their dynasties. And I don't want to use that word dynasty, but they were really good. They had that core that was stuck together, found ways to bring in somebody else, and just really, they seem to always find another way to just hit that next level as far as that stuff goes. But this year, it seems like you said, a lot of teams are realizing, okay, this is the direction we got to go in and everything else, and they're actually making the commitment to secure better players. They're kicking over the rocks wherever they can find extra guys that have got talent. And then I think that's good for the league and everything else, but at the same time, it's just like, okay, I'm worried about the have-nots that are not jumping on the ship as far as that stuff goes, and right now they're going to get left behind. And I don't know what's going to happen with those teams.
They're just going to finish in last. I don't think they're going to get left behind, right? They're just going to finish in last, right? And I don't know who it is. It could be us. That's the thing, right? It could be anybody. And as the quality of the league goes up, that's a good thing, right? There's parity in the league, which is a good thing, but there's obviously the organizations that look like I'm not worried that Welland doesn't have the guys that they had last year.
Exactly.
They're gonna get good.
Well, Jason McKay, and everybody else in that little brain trust is gonna find ways to find replacement. Yeah.
They just know everything that I think about with our roster. I'm very certain that Jason McKay sits there in his office and thinks about the same thing about the players that he's losing and doesn't want to lose and wants to keep long term. And they won. The toughest thing to win is to win again, right? And I know that that's what they're trying to do. And so, again, I'm not really concerned about the organizations that get quote unquote left behind. I know that everybody knows what their own situation is, and I'm down to support them in any which way we possibly can. But I think I told you this last year, right? The only way I know how to make the league better is by making the Cardinals better right now.
Exactly.
And I know with that mentality, well, the rest of it is going to take care of itself, right? I'm Cardinals centric. I'm not IBL centric, right? I want to win the league. I'm not trying to help everybody else win the league.
Exactly.
And so as long as we do our job, I know that Welland does their job, Barrie does their job, London does their job, right? And even Brantford, right? I don't care where they are now. They still have more championships than pretty much everybody in the league. So anybody can get to that point, and you need to have that perspective where back in their dynasty, I'm sure no one would have ever pictured that they'd be struggling the way they did last year. But in spite of that, they beat us. So
it happens. Exactly.
Right? So what are you going to say about it? It doesn't really matter. It's baseball. So
exactly.
I ain't concerned about them. I know that everybody's going to find their way. It's just a matter of finding their way in the direction that the league is going. So
if you were handicapping the league, where would you put the Hamilton Cardinals?
Where would I rank us?
Yeah. Going into the season, the best?
We're the best.
All right.
Yeah, I feel like I'm confident with the roster that we've got for years going on.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I know we've been trying to get this done for a couple of weeks and everything else, but I do really appreciate it. Just worked out. We both had a day off, or you're working from home. I'm enjoying the day off. It's March break, so I'm having some fun and just relaxing around the house. Thank you so much, George.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to seeing you at the stadium this year, and
looking forward to it. I got to get one of those black hats. The red ones don't look.
Stadium. We'll get you a couple of those.
All right, sir. See you soon.
All right, Danielle.